Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Book of Constitutions from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Book of Constitutions. The Book of Constitutions is that work in which is contained the rules and regulations adopted for the government of the Fraternity of Freemasons. Undoubtedly, a society so orderly and systematic must always have been governed by a prescribed code of laws. But in the lapse of ages, the precise regulations which were adopted for the direction of the craft in ancient times have been lost. The earliest record that we have of any such constitutions is in a manuscript first quoted in 1723 by Anderson, Constitution 1723, page 32 and 33, which he said was written in the reign of Edward IV. Preston, page 182, edition 1788, quotes the same record and adds that it is said to have been in the possession of the famous Elias Ashmole and unfortunately destroyed, a statement which had not been previously made by Anderson. To Anderson, therefore, we must look in our estimation of the authenticity of this document, and that we cannot too much rely upon his accuracy as a transcriber is apparent, not only from the initial evidence of style, but also from the fact that he made important alterations in his copy of it in his edition of 1738. Such as it is, however, it contains the following particulars. Though the ancient records of the Brotherhood in England were many of them destroyed or lost in the wars of the Saxons and Danes, yet King Athelstan, the grandson of King Alfred the Great, a mighty architect, the first appointed king of England, and who translated the Holy Bible into the Saxon tongue, A.D. 930, when he had brought the land into rest and peace, built many great works, and encouraged many masons from France, who were appointed overseers thereof, and brought with them the charges and regulations of the lodges preserved since the Roman times, who also prevailed with the king to improve the constitution of the English lodges according to the foreign model, and to increase the wages of working masons. The said king's youngest son, Prince Edwin, being taught masonry, and taking upon him the charges of a master mason, for the love he had to the said craft and the honorable principles whereon it is grounded, purchased a free charter of King Athelstan his father, for the masons having a correction among themselves, as it was anciently expressed, or a freedom and power to regulate themselves, to amend what might happen amiss, and to hold a yearly communication and general assembly. Accordingly, Prince Edwin summoned all the masons in the realm to meet him in a congregation at York, who came and composed a general lodge, of which he was Grand Master, and having brought with them all the writings and records extant, some in Greek, some in Latin, some in French, and other languages, from the continents thereof that assemble, did frame the constitution and charges of an English lodge, and made a law to preserve and observe the same in all time coming, and ordained good pay for working masons. Other records have from time to time been discovered, most of them recently, which prove beyond all doubt that the Fraternity of Freemasons was, at least in the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th centuries, in possession of manuscript constitutions containing the rules and regulations of the craft. In the year 1717, Freemasonry, which had somewhat fallen into decay in the south of England, was revived by the organization of the Grand Lodge at London, and in the next year, the Grand Master having desired, says Anderson, any brethren to bring to the Grand Lodge any old writings and records concerning masons and masonry, in order to show the usages of ancient times. Several copies of the Gothic constitutions were produced and collated. Constitution 1738, page 110. But these constitutions have been found to be very erroneous and defective, probably from carelessness or ignorance in their frequent transcription. In September 1721, the Duke of Montague, who was then Grand Master, ordered Brother James Anderson to digest them. in a new and better method. Anderson, having accordingly accomplished the important task that had been assigned to him, in December of the same year, a committee consisting of 14 learned brethren was appointed to examine the book, and in March, communication of the subsequent year, having reported their approbation of it, it was, after some amendments, adopted by the Grand Lodge and published in 1723, under the title of The Constitutions of the Freemasons, containing the history, charges, regulations, etc. of that most ancient and right worshipful fraternity, for the use of the lodges. A second edition was published in 1738 under the superintendence of a committee of grand officers, but this edition contains so many alterations, interpolations, and omissions of the charges and regulations as they appeared in the first, as to show the most reprehensible inaccuracy in its composition, and to render it utterly worthless except as a literary curiosity. It does not seem to have been very popular, for the printers, to complete their sales, were compelled to commit a fraud, and to present what they pretended to be a new edition in 1746, but which was really only the edition of 1738, with a new title page neatly pasted in, the old one being cancelled. Of this literary fraud, I have a copy in my library, and have recently seen another in the possession of a Mason of Washington City. In 1754, Brother Jonathan Scott presented a memorial to the Grand Lodge, showing the necessity of a new edition of the Book of Constitutions. It was then ordered that the book should be revised, and necessary alterations and additions made consistent with the laws and rules of Masonry, all of which would seem to show the dissatisfaction of the fraternity with the errors of the second edition. Accordingly, a third edition was published in 1756, under the editorship of Reverend John Entick. The fourth edition, prepared by a committee, was published in 1767. In 1784, John Northup published by authority the fifth edition. This was well printed in quarto, with numerous notes, and is considered the most valuable edition. The sixth and seventh edition were edited by William Williams and published in 1815 and in 1827. The eighth edition was published in 1841 by William Henry White, who was the Grand Secretary. In each of these last three editions, the historical part was omitted and nothing was given but the charges, regulations, and laws. The Book of Constitutions was republished in America and in Ireland, but these 8 editions, enumerated above, are the only original editions of the Book of Constitutions which were officially authorized by the Grand Lodge of England. The book is carried in all processions before the Grand Master, on a velvet cushion, and the right of so carrying is vested in the master of the oldest lodge, a privilege which arose from the following circumstances. During the reign of Queen Anne, Freemasonry was in a languishing condition, in consequence of the age and infirmities of the Grand Master, Sir Christopher Wren. On his death and the accession of George I to the throne, the 4 old lodges then existing in London determined to revive the Grand Lodge, which had for some years been dormant, and to renew the quarterly communications and the annual feast. This measure they accomplished, and resolved, among other things, that no lodge thereafter should be permitted to act, the 4 old lodges excepted, unless by authority of a charter granted by the Grand Master, with the approbation and consent of the Grand Lodge. In consequence of this, the old Masons in the metropolis vested all their inherent privileges as individuals in the 4 old lodges, in trust that they would never suffer the ancient landmarks to be infringed, while on their part these bodies consented to extend their patronage to every lodge which should thereafter be regularly constituted, and to admit their masters and wardens to share with them all the privileges of the Grand Lodge, that of presidents only excepted. The extension of this order, however, beginning to give to the new lodges a numerical superiority in the Grand Lodge, it was feared they would at length be able, by a majority, to subvert the privileges of the original Masons of England, which had been centered in the 4 old lodges. On this account, a code of articles was drawn up, with the consent of all the brethren, for the future government of the society, To this was annexed a regulation binding the Grand Master and his successors, and the master of every newly constituted lodge, to preserve these regulations inviolable, and declaring that no new regulation could be proposed except at the third quarterly communication, and requiring it to be publicly read at the annual feast to every brother, even the youngest apprentice, when the approbation of at least 2/3 of those present should be requisite to render it obligatory. To commemorate this circumstance, it has been customary for the master of the oldest lodge to attend every grand installation, and, taking precedence of all present, the Grand Master excepted, to deliver the Book of Constitutions to the newly installed Grand Master, on his promising obedience to the ancient charges and general regulations. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.